Is there something to worry about with medicines? That is, might some of them have side effects? Do we need safety testing? I mean, and we're taking things that are, genetically modified organisms, and we're injecting them in little kids' arms. We just shoot them right into the vein.
Ah, yes, the tech bros. Everyone's favorite group of political chameleons only looking to stay alive long enough to satisfy and complete their actual mission. It seems like just yesterday, they're in the news, and just like with everything with the tech bro and big tech, the quieter that things are, the better it is for them.
And I would expect the first uses of AI to be, or certainly the first government uses of AI to be weapons technology. So just having more advanced weapons on the battlefield that can react faster than any human could. That's really what AI will be capable of.
I know it wasn't too long ago, maybe within the past 10 years, it's been quite the incredible political transformation that big tech and the tech bros have made with the right. I'm old enough to remember all of these censorship campaigns that came from big tech, giving it to the mob on things like BLM and with the social justice, and even people like Zuckerberg giving in to the deep state on things like the Hunter Biden laptop story.
Like, there was a lot of attention on Twitter during the election because of the Hunter Biden laptop story. The New York Post.
We had that too.
Yeah, so you guys censored that as well?
So we took a different path than Twitter. Basically the background here is the FBI, I think, basically came to us, some folks on our team, and was like, hey, just so you know, like, you should be on high alert. There was we thought that there was a lot of Russian propaganda in the 2016 election. We have it on notice that basically there's about to be some kind of dump of that's similar to that. So just be vigilant. So our protocol is different from Twitter's. What Twitter did is they said you can't share this at all. We didn't do that. What we do is we have if something is reported to us as potentially misinformation, important misinformation, we also have this third-party fact-checking program because we don't want to be deciding what's true and false. And for I think it was 5 or 7 days when it was basically being determined whether it was false, the distribution on Facebook was decreased, but people were still allowed to share it. So you could still share it, you could still consume it.
So when you say the distribution is decreased,
it got shared.
How does that work?
It basically, the ranking in newsfeed was a little bit less.
Things like these happened all the time, and like that, it seems like we've all forgotten, and for no good reason. I mean, I remember when Jack Dorsey went on Joe Rogan with Tim Pool and got absolutely shredded for his philosophy of giving in to the social justice left.
I don't want to kick someone off for one thing. But if there's a pattern in practice, like there was from Milo, we are going to have to take action at some point because we can't sit back and let people be abused and harassed and silenced on the platform.
Well, so one really important thing that needs to be stated is that Twitter, by definition, is a biased platform in favor of the left, period. It's not a question. I understand you might have your own interpretation, but it's very simple. Conservatives do not agree with you on the definition of misgendering. If you have a rule in place that specifically adheres to the left ideology, you, by default, are enforcing rules from a biased perspective.
Well, Tim, there are a lot of people on the left who don't agree with how we're doing our job either.
For sure.
And those people think that we don't take enough action on abuse and harassment, and we let far too much behavior go. And they think
but that's
Twitter...
a radical example, though. I mean, what he's talking about, in terms of generalities, in general, things lean far more left. Would you agree to that?
I don't know what that means.
But in this particular case, it's how the speech is being used. This is a new vector of attack that people have felt that I don't want to be on this platform anymore because I'm being harassed and abused and I need to get the hell out.
Well, people harass and abuse me all day and night. You don't do anything about that. My notification's permanently locked at 99. You have it worse than I do. I mean, you got substantially more followers. And I don't click the notification tab anymore because it's basically just harassment. And so this is a really funny anecdote. I was covering a story in Berkeley, and someone said, if you see him, attack him. Like, it was, I'm paraphrasing. They said, basically, to swing at me, take my stuff, steal from me. And Twitter told me, after review, it was not a violation of their policy. Somebody made an allusion to me being a homosexual, and I reported that, instantly gone. So when I show, so for me, I'm like, well, of course, Twitter is going to enforce the social justice aspect of their policy immediately. In my opinion, probably because you guys have PR constraints and you're probably nervous about that. But when someone actually threatens me with a crime and incites their followers to do it, nothing got done.
Well,
and I'm not the only one who feels that way.
Well, Tim, that's a mistake.
On things like gender and gender ideology and policies surrounding that. It wasn't too long ago that these things were constant and were things that the right had to battle up against. Things like shadow banning, things that we were told were not happening, but thanks to the Twitter files of Matt Taibbi, we know that they were.
Investigative journalist Matt Taibbi, he was one of the key investigators of the Twitter files, which exposed collusion between social media companies, the nonprofit sector, and the federal government to censor Americans on a mass scale.
In parallel to this censorship program, I think what they're doing with things like shadow banning and denial listing is they're trying to simplify controversies and reduce everybody's intellectual field of view. And in doing so, kind of drain our will to be curious, to stand up for ourselves, to think about things in a complicated way.
They were, in fact, censoring everything and everything. They were everywhere at once. But that was the old tech right. That was the old big tech. Now, with the reemergence of the Trump administration with Donald Trump and MAGA, now suddenly Zuckerberg's libertarian, doing jujitsu and MMA.
I mean, seeing Donald Trump get up after getting shot in the face and pump his fist in the air with the American flag is one of the most badass things I've ever seen in my life. But look, I mean, it's and I think, look, it's, at some level as an American, it's like hard to not get kind of emotional about that spirit and that fight. And I think that's why a lot of people like the guy.
Suddenly, Apple is releasing not BLM and Pride themed ads anymore. It's actually surprisingly family oriented with the Apple AirPods commercial.
Got it last week. I think I know what it is. Are you serious? Guys, thank you. The color that you wanted. Did you know this is
Light the fire. You place the flowers in the vase that you bought.
And even Jeff Bezos is backtracking and is telling his board just before the election that he wanted to start hiring more conservatives. Now, was this seen correctly as, by some, as a big transformation that, oh, wow, the tide is turning. Maybe this is going to be different. Maybe the big tech is different and they've learned. Maybe everyone is starting to shift with Trump.
If we're talking about Trump, I think it's very interesting. I'm actually very optimistic this time around that we're going to see. I'm very hopeful about this. He seems to have a lot of energy around reducing regulation. And my point of view, if I can help him do that, I'm going to help him.
Or maybe, as other people saw it, maybe it was just a move to save their asses. Maybe it was a move like a buoy to stay above the water, to kind of follow the crowd. Now, was Bezos admittedly maybe taking a big bet when he was going to hire conservatives before the election? Yeah, maybe. Definitely. There was no guarantee. There's no guarantee in politics. But I think it's also I think it's very important to remember that what if Kamala won? Maybe if Kamala won, do you think that they would kowtow to the deep state yet again, like Zuckerberg did? Do you think that they would cozy up to the social justice left to get along, to go along? Maybe they would have hammered down on censorship on conservatives and the right. Listen, I don't blame these guys are doing what they do because at the end of the day, it's in their self-interests. Sometimes honesty doesn't always get you where you want to be. You don't want to be honest, or else you won't have an opportunity to make the majority happen when the majority actually shifts on things. But what the the thing that actually cracks the mask on these types of things are issues that directly affect them. And we got a reminder of this with the H-1B issue, with one of the former tech bros, Elon Musk, who is literally probably the modern day Tony Stark, got into a big fight with MAGA about H-1Bs and arguing that the importance of it for importing the, brilliant and brightest of the world, sucking them out of their countries and putting them into America to optimize and maximize GDP.
We've been on fire the last 24, 48 hours on this very topic. Tell me, what are we actually talking about? What is the real story here, Gavin?
Well, we're talking about the heart of the MAGA movement. We're talking about the very core of President Trump's mandate, and it is migration, both illegal and legal. And what we've seen has been a completely ridiculous shift for many people, including Vivek Ramaswamy, who ran on a campaign of ending the H-1B racket, all of a sudden turn a new leaf, attack American culture, attack Americans, calling them lazy, calling them uneducated, calling them incapable of filling these jobs, when in reality, as you mentioned in the open, H-1B is a scheme by these big tech companies for indentured servants. They bring over not the best and the brightest. They're bringing over entry-level positions, middle-level positions to fill their companies. They're paying pennies on the dollar. They're abusing these workers, giving them little to no benefits. They can fire them at any time and send them back home. It's basically modern indentured servitude. And in the meantime, we're losing hundreds of thousands of what used to be good-paying middle-class or entry-level jobs for Americans, young Americans of all stripes and all backgrounds. It's absolutely disgusting. It's an insult to the American people, and it needs to end. And I think they opened the floodgates yesterday on X with comments from many of these tech executives that showed their utter disdain for the American people, for the heartland, for our culture. And this was really turning into a class debate. It was turning into what you mentioned, elites versus the people, elites versus the populists. And they couldn't argue on the merits because at the end of the day, they simply don't want to pay American wages for American jobs. They want to pay Indian wages for Indian workers in American jobs. And that's the disgrace.
All while undercutting American labor and cutting wages. Now, do I blame these companies for doing this? No, not necessarily. After all, there are tons of companies that advertise that they are made in America. It's just that things like Apple aren't one of them. Other countries like Google and Microsoft aren't one of them. But that was one of the first issues that kind of reminded everyone that, you know what? The big tech is still big tech. They haven't changed. But then more time went by, we were lulled to sleep yet again with AI legislation, where big tech realized that why are they fighting legislation and regulation so bad when they could just be like big oil and big business and big pharma, cozy up to the government's agencies, the head of the agencies, and actually create regulatory capture for their current competitors and barriers to entry for the future, securing their spot at the top. Happened with social media and with censorship, where instead of the usual for like the past 5 years, where they would target conservatives and shadow ban them and have erroneous gender policies surrounding transgenderism and trying to lock people down for saying little mean words.
And I will clarify, too, your rules specifically say targeted misgendering and dead naming, I believe is correct, right?
So years ago, we passed a policy that we call our hateful conduct policy, and that prohibits targeting or attacking someone based on their belonging in any number of groups, whether it's because of their religion or their race or their gender, their sexual orientation, their gender identity. So it was something that's broad-based, is that you can't choose to attack people because of these characteristics.
But you do have limits on what characteristics you police. Right, so you're not banning people for targeted trans-speciesing others, right?
We are starting to see it yet again with things like racism and anti-Semitism, trying to target people for those things. And the tech right is very intelligent how they do this. They aren't the enemy. They aren't the ones pushing the big red button. What they are messengers. They play the messenger game. Because everyone knows you don't kill the messenger. They merely obey the government.
Anti-Semitic platforms like Gab have no place in Texas and certainly do not represent Texas values. What does represent Texas values is legislation like this by Representative King and Representative Copeland that fights anti-Semitism in Texas.
If the government says to do this, then big tech says, all right, you know what? You told me to do it, and I'll do it. You go along to get along. And I think it's very important that we don't forget these things. Because at the end of the day, big tech's main purpose, main idea, main driver, their MO, is very dystopian in nature. It's very anti-human. At first, the big tech is very reliant on numbers and data, trying to optimize everything, pretty much. If you ever worked at an Amazon warehouse, you know this very well. Everything is monitored and tracked for optimization purposes. And it really feels like the whole institution is void of any humanity. Now click and drag that to the entire economy. Everyone is a number. Everyone is tracked. Everyone is monitored for optimization. You aren't a person. You are an economic unit. Everything is attuned to the goal of maximizing GDP. Graph go up.
America into India are fuckers. People are not interchangeable economic units. If they're not more than that, then that's just an extension of antinatalism. That's just nihilism. That's just people don't matter. Neil deGrasse Tyson, the universe doesn't care shit. The universe cares. That's why we're here. It's understandable why a computer guy, why an engineer would think that or would want to think that, because it would make solving problems so much easier. We have hardwired group preferences, we have genetic memory, we have culture. This is not learned stuff. It's so deeply embedded in us that it carries on for thousands of years. Thinking of people as interchangeable units, while it would be useful in a simulation or in an economic theorem, it strips them of their humanity. And by the way, it's one of the first steps towards any authoritarian dictatorship type system. It's one of the first steps towards Marxism, is thinking of people as just labor. It's a very gross, anti-human thing to think, just to appeal to the Redditor in you.
And that is very dangerous, because that's what communism is. Devoid of humanity, focused solely on optimization and survival.
Look, we built PG, which single-handedly stopped the rise of the far right in Europe. We built Foundry, which was used to distribute the COVID vaccine and saved millions of lives globally. We built what we call multi-constellation, and what's often called the digital kill chain. And they're category-defining products. So when you deliver these products to the market, just honestly, people say this isn't going to exist, this isn't valuable, but then it changes the market. And then the market is the Palantir market. Now, that doesn't mean everyone in the world is going to buy our product, but it means most of the sensible people in the world are going to buy from the category we defined.
Everything about big tech is about optimization. Everything about big tech is about automation. Once this software or technology becomes good enough, they'll scratch labor entirely. And again, I think it's very important, I've said this multiple times on the channel before, I don't blame these companies for doing this, because at the end of the day, they're only really merely following their incentives. And I never fault people for that, because I would rather people, instead of following their base desires of human nature, I would rather them follow a set of incentives structured by society. And so in that worldview, it really matters what the incentive structures are. Right now, big business, big ag, big pharma, big tech, big oil, the whole 9 yards, they're all incentivized to control their industries through lobbying in Congress. But in that sense, as Ronald Reagan said, people wouldn't lobby the government if they knew the government didn't do anything. So in this sense, it's not really the corporations or industries' jobs not to lobby. It's the government's job not to give in. That's a very important distinction that I don't think gets enough attention or acknowledgement of. These industry leaders, people like Tim Cook, Jeff Bezos, Mark Zuckerberg, Musk even, all these big tech supergiants, Sam Altman, they're all just following incentives. And it's Congress's job to not give in. One of the things that bothers me most with Musk is his fascination with transhumanism.
A lot of breakthroughs on the medical front, particularly around synthetic mRNA. You can basically do anything with synthetic RNA, DNA. it's like a computer program. So, I think with enough, with effort, that's not too crazy. You could probably stop aging, reverse it if you want. You can basically do it. You can turn someone into a freaking butterfly if you want with the right DNA sequence.
And it's not because Musk is an isolated actor. It's actually because I don't think that the rest of big tech is very far behind him. With Neuralink, does it produce absolutely stunningly beautiful and divine developments and innovations? Absolutely. Curing people of blindness and giving them the ability, or curing paralysis for other cases, is that a beautiful thing and good? Absolutely, 100%. But what isn't is turning people into superhumans, trying to put chips in their head to boost their abilities, make them superhumanly intelligent. Because the road to hell is paved through good intentions. Where you could see in the economy, everyone is tracked and monitored to make sure that they're making their quotas and they're transformed from humans to economic units. Click and drag that from an economy to a society. Not run by a CEO, but run by the state. And what do you get? We get a social credit score. You get a society structured around not humanity's optimization of fulfillment and the good, but fulfillment of GDP, fulfillment of just surviving. You get endless monitoring and tracking done by yours truly at Palantir.
Is there a tech lobby? Yeah, there's a tech lobby. Let me tell you one of the things that's been in the news that I know you've discussed. Palantir, right? Mm-hmm. And the contracts that they're getting, $113 million to create this database on Americans. And I know you asked someone.
I did. I asked JD Vance about Palantir because I'm scared of it, right?
Yeah.
This is just on my thing. That's so crazy, dude. We are like, this is bananas. I asked JD Vance about Palantir because I'm scared of it. I felt like he gave kind of a political answer to me, right? Which is no judgment. That's what I felt like. I want our listeners to know why I'm concerned. Well, one of the reasons is that Palantir got a $795 million contract with the U.S. Army for the Maven Smart System, which is using artificial intelligence tools for data fusion and target identification. And then a $30 million contract from the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement to develop an operating system that identifies undocumented immigrants and tracks self-deportations. So one of the things that's going on is that it feels like to me that they are asking they've granted Palantir the opportunity to create this overall database. And that is one thing that JD did talk about. So maybe he didn't give that just a political answer. He said he believes that it's just an overall database where like the local police department will now have them and the IRS, everything will be synced up so that if you're involved in something in the world, all the databases will be linked, right?
Or through not the private sector, but through contracting. Everything with big tech is driven around dehumanization and optimization, as I said before. And to really see this in action, you need to look no further than Bill Gates.
A thing on the left, CO2, that you want to get to zero, and that's going to be based on the number of people, the services each person's using on average, the energy on average for each service, and the CO2 being put out per unit of energy. So let's look at each one of these and see how we can get this down to zero. Probably one of these numbers is going to have to get pretty near to zero. That's back from high school algebra, but let's take a look. First, we've got population. The world today has 6.8 billion people. That's headed up to about 9 billion. Now, if we do a really great job on new vaccines, healthcare, reproductive health services, we could lower that by perhaps 10 or 15%.
As Bill Gates did in the moment, it turns out that one of the best ways to get rid of carbon emissions is to depopulate the planet. Now, they said that was a discussion surrounding climate change, But the same issue is occurring with any other issue in big tech. The issues aren't approached through a humanity first lens. It's driven by a data and analytical statistical lens and data analysis lens. The same people who told us learn to code are only starting to realize this now. But the problem is that they are the best industry at making us forget everything. All Zuckerberg has to do is film himself with a tuxedo on July 4th, waving an American flag while surfing. That's all he has to do. All he has to do is go on Rogan and talk about his experience in MMA. Now he's just a libertarian. All Tim Cook has to do is throw out a few pro-family ads around the holidays, and he's off the hook. I understand the drive to want to forgive and forget, and it's a very admirable one. But you don't ever have to completely forget someone's past, because those who don't know history are doomed to repeat it. Big tech is an industry that is uniquely destructive, perhaps more than any other industry. Sure, big pharma makes us sick, and big ag makes us fat, and maybe big business is all about trying to cut down your wages. And big oil is all about trying to pollute the planet. But if big tech gets their way, the externalities of big tech are astronomically worse than any other industry. Because other than being sick or fat or polluted or poor, what if you are in a communist society monitored by the state using AI, trying to optimize the economy and GDP under a totalitarian regime where there are monitors and cameras in every single house, you are tracked with a social credit score, and the police can knock down your door thanks to forecasting software because they think that you might commit a crime.
I'm sure you still have friends who are in stand-up comedy and who have good nights and bad nights. Now, Palantir, this database, suddenly flags and does an algorithm, and if someone's having income here and there, they say, well, is this person a risk for tax evasion? And suddenly they're getting audited because they're making a predictive model that stand-up comedians should be making $70,000 a year, and this person isn't disclosing their income. Are they a risk? We don't know with Palantir, what their algorithm is targeting. Are they targeting ordinary people who have incomes that are variable? Or are they targeting the billionaires who are evading taxes? It's just a black box.
Predictive policing. Maybe that's the absolute worst thing that can happen. Because where the other circumstances may happen and affect only you, that would happen to everyone. And once you're in a totalitarian regime, as North Korea, it's almost impossible to get out. So big tech is cozying up to the Trump administration. They're cozying up to the right. They're cozying up to MAGA, hoping that, like a boyfriend making up to a girlfriend, that all their mistakes in the past are going to be forgotten and forgiven. And to the right, I only ask, are you really going to let them off that easy? Are you really going to forget all those years of lying, manipulation, and gaslighting? Telling you that you're not being shadow banned. Telling you that Hunter Biden's laptop is fake. Going along with the deep state against the American citizens. Lying to them blatantly. Making a fool out of themselves with BLM and social justice. The insanity of gender ideology. All because of a few flips on a couple positions. A few podcasts. A few ads. And no lasting change that was implemented. These people aren't different. They're just wearing a different mask. And until we are comfortable with looking at some people who we may have made temporary peace treaties with politically, it's always important and even vital that we never forget what their true motives are. Because while it's easy when they're on our side, don't think for a second that they are loyal. Because Because if Kamala had won, you know exactly what they would do. They only flipped because Trump was going to win. That's the only reason why they did it. Apple saw the waves of the ocean going the opposite direction, and they responded accordingly. Bezos knew the direction the country was going in the week before the election. And Zuckerberg needs to protect himself from investigations, so now he's suddenly an MMA super fan and a avid libertarian. He knows where the river is leading. Cook with Apple, Bill Gates with Microsoft, Elon Musk with Neuralink. All these people, Jeff Bezos with the Washington Post, they all know what they are doing. And they're hoping that they can lull you to sleep by throwing you a few bones politically, making you feel better about MAGA, about being on the right. Giving you a few bones of agreement. Don't fall for it. Because the second they do, it's a Trojan horse all over again. And you need not look further than Peter Thiel with Palantir. Because exactly how they will do it. It's the optimization of the society. It is the monitoring and tracking of AI. And is the collusion with the deep state that will allow a social credit score to be implemented and the adoption of predictive policing and other dehuman dystopian innovations developments. This isn't just about Facebook or Microsoft or Tesla. This is about AI cozying up to the government, to the state, and lulling you to sleep until it's too late. Run the water and turn the temperature up. Don't be the ones who are born alive. Because they may have flirted with turning down the water and even pulling you out of the pot, but they haven't. They've only done face-saving measures. These people aren't honest. These people are only trying to survive. So it's up to us to make sure that we do. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, hit the like button. If you'd like to support and help the channel grow, become a member, subscribe, and ring the bell to stay updated with all my uploads. Finally, whether you agree or disagree, leave your thoughts in the comment section below. I look forward to engaging with you guys in respectful and thoughtful discussions. With that said, I'll see you guys next video. See ya.